And welcome back to the Bantz. As always, I am your host, the Bantz. And finally, once again, it is Friday, the end of the week. I hope you are all looking forward to the weekend. I know I am. But before we can get into that, as always, it is time for our second and final What's Happening in Fashion this week. So let's just get right into it. And first up, of course, we have our headlines for the day. And starting us off, let's talk about the Kanye West Yay Listening Party merch. Now, I'm sure you can tell that right off the bat, these pieces are just utter shit. I mean, the designs are boring, they're super lackluster, they seem to be done very lazy, the colors suck, and of course, because it is Kanye West merchandise, it's completely overpriced. And what's with that one shirt, specifically this one? I mean, what is this sad, sorry excuse for a cactus plant flea market ripoff? I mean, really. And do you know what's even worse than the designs in this collection? It's the fact that this collection sold $500,000 worth of product on release in just 30 minutes. Seriously, what the fuck is wrong with people? Like, I really just don't understand this shit. Aside from the fact that these pieces are just pure trash, anybody who bought them wasn't there. None of you went to the release party. None of you sat there alongside Kanye West and listened to this album drop on the date that is printed on these pieces. This is really just the equivalent of buying really expensive tour merch from a band that you haven't seen on tour. You know what? Actually, here's a good example. Let's take a look at this t-shirt right here. Now, if you don't recognize it, this is the Alive World Tour shirt that Daft Punk sold during their 07 tour. Now, why do I have this shirt? It's because I saw them live during that tour. And would I own this shirt if I didn't see them live then? No. Why? Because that would be fucking stupid. So for all y'all out there that decided to buy this expensive shit because my Kanye West or my clout or my Instagram likes, good fucking job. You played yourself. Alright, so now with that out of the way, let's move on into our second headline, and that is that Moncler showed off their new, what they're calling, Genius strategy, and honestly, I think it's a pretty cool idea. So if you already haven't guessed by now, this Genius strategy does in fact correlate with their Genius collaborations, which we talked about here, I'd say 2 or 3 months ago. And if you didn't check those out, definitely go do. There's some really amazing collections. But what they're planning to do with those is, instead of dropping them in their own collection or push them out along seasonally with the rest of the Moncler pieces, they're actually going to do special drops for them every month. So you're going to get 12 drops of Genius pieces a year. And I really do enjoy this idea. I mean, we just super recently talked about how now that Gosha Rubchinskiy is no longer doing seasonal collections, he's just dropping collections whenever he feels like they're ready, how that might send ripples throughout the industry for better or worse. And I think here Moncler took that idea and kind of flipped it around. Instead of doing maybe a collection once or twice a year, they decided to ramp it up and do the exact opposite by pushing out a season, or in this case, a collection every month. And I really do think this will work out for them because, one, the fact that they're releasing more product more often will get a lot more eyes on their product, especially because it's going to be in smaller waves than they would normally from season to season. And pushing off of that idea of smaller waves too, because all of the Genius collection is part of collaborations with other designers, and the fact that they're pushing these out monthly rather than seasonally means that the designers can really do smaller waves, smaller collections here. And that overall seems like it would be a lot less draining in the long run, because you can just pump out a few pieces here and there a month and still have it be part of this collection. So once again, tides are changing in the fashion industry, and I'm really excited to see where something like this ends up and how it changes everything else in the future. Okay, and now let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, Victor Solomon showed off the newest piece in his Literally Balling series, which, if you're not familiar, is his way of combining these classic art mediums such as stained glass or crystal with basketball. I mean, that's all there really is to it. And here he shows off his newest creation, a kintsugi-esque porcelain basketball held together with gold. Really phenomenal piece. I mean, what more can I say about it? And if you are interested in looking at this piece or seeing a little bit more of his works, then I definitely check out this article. Then New York's GR Gallery showed off their newest exhibit titled Dypopia, and it features artists Belen, Tommaso Bett, and Adam Lister in their own unique styles, with, of course, pop culture references melded in with all of their pieces. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, or if you are a fan of Ron English-esque pieces, definitely worth checking out. And lastly, artist Racardo Cavolo showed off his newest exhibit, now going on in Montreal, Quebec. And although personally I'm not a huge fan of his art, definitely he went over and above in making this exhibit something special, as you can see in the photos here. So if you actually do enjoy some of this stuff, or maybe you just want to check out the exhibit, I definitely look at some of the photos here. Otherwise, if you happen to be in Montreal, I definitely go check this out. Alright, and now moving back into our fashion for the day. First up, we have the newest Supreme and North Face collaboration, and it is just as shit as you'd expect it to be. Now, you know how those genius designers over there at Supreme, you know, the ones that just won the CFDA award for Best Menswear Designers of the Year. You know how they like to really go above and beyond in their designs by usually taking one print or one pattern and literally just beating it to death across as many pieces as they can? Well, that's exactly what they did here. And just from looking at these photos, do you want to take a small guess at what pattern they decided to use this time around? Yes, they did use snakeskin. Again. For about the 20th time, I think. Really groundbreaking stuff there, Supreme. And before you go trying to defend this, that's really all this collection is. Snakeskin print on jacket, pants, bucket hat, and of course, tent. Because you know how many people in New York City need a fucking Supreme tent. Oh, but the Bantz, at least they used 2 different colors for the snakeskin print. Go fuck yourself. Then Alexander Wang showed off his newest runway collection, and it really just is Alexander Wang. Now, I will say personally up front, I am not the biggest of Alexander Wang fans, and I've never been a huge fan of his designs or style, but even so, I feel like these pieces here are still fairly well done. And as I said before, I mean, this collection just screams Alexander Wang. Once again, we see some really nice gaudy pieces that don't feel overly gaudy, so you can still wear them without looking too weird. Then we have the more athletic, more sportswear-esque obviously influenced pieces, which come off in this collection very nicely as they've done so many times before. And of course, what would an Alexander Wang collection be without his own take on some little slice of Americana, although this time you can tell that he definitely went for a huge slice of that Chicano vibe. And what else can I really say about this collection? I mean, obviously it's going to be a little bit more on the expensive side, and Wang has done a really good job of taking these ideas, these cultures that aren't necessarily luxurious in their own, and kind of elevating them along with his style to a point where they kind of feel somewhat elitist, somewhat pompous, but that's exactly what Alexander Wang does best. So obviously this style is not for everybody, myself included, but at the very least, good job here, Alexander. Like, the collection looks pretty decent overall. However, once again, your shoes just fucking suck. And lastly, Notre and Notre got together for their newest capsule collection, and this is just amazing. Now, obviously, this isn't meant to be a colorful collection by any means, but that's really okay because that's not what we're here for. What we're here for is some of the more aesthetics of these pieces and just some of the really interesting designs that come along with these pieces as well too. I mean, the patterns of some of these pieces are just so inspirational, I guess you could say, along with some of the design choices and some of the aesthetics used here, like some of the pocket placements on some of the pieces, or just how the pockets are cut in general. And I do have to say that one button-up shirt is just fucking flawless. And as if this collection couldn't get any cooler, this entire collection was handmade by the team in Chicago. I mean, how fucking cool is that? Especially when you see the pricing on some of these pieces, which is nowhere near close to being terrible, given all the time, effort, and US makings of these pieces. So absolutely fantastic job to Notre and Notre. Really looking forward to seeing you guys do another capsule collection again sometime soon. Okay, and finally, let's move on to our articles for the day. And starting off, the talk sat down with designer Umit Benan for a really insightful conversation, kind of going over a bunch of different ideas, such as why he decided to pull out of fashion shows, or the balance between being creative and commercially viable, and even just some of his other just kind of thoughts about the industry as a whole. If you find yourself wanting to work in fashion, definitely give this a read. Some really interesting ideas in here. Then Heddles did a nice brief history of my personal favorite brand, Kapital, and just a really nice brief overview, as well as showing off some of their more iconic pieces. So if you're not familiar with the brand and want to get to know more, I definitely give this a look. Then Fashionista put out a very nice article kind of going over the idea or what the role is behind being a brand's fashion archivist. And they talk to two separate brands here. They talk with Gap and G-Star Raw and talk about kind of the similarities and the differences of what they do in their archiving. And really, I didn't even know this position existed, but it makes a lot of sense, and if it sounds interesting to you, then I definitely give this a read. And lastly, Morning Consult did a very interesting article on this idea of how Levi's, even for being as successful and renowned as it is trying to rebrand a little bit, and they really first go into just how successful Levi's is as a denim company. But even so, amidst all this kind of athleisure and other styles that have become more prevalent over the last couple years, how it's caused the brand to be hit really hard. And even though denim is looking at a revival among most fashionistas coming up in the next coming years, they still have to look into other methods of keeping their denim styles fresh and new, which is not really something they're super well known for or really successful at doing. So if you are a denim head and kind of want to see what one of the largest, actually the largest denim brand worldwide is doing to kind of keep up against all these other styles, definitely check this out. Alright guys, and with that we come to the end of our second and final whiff for the week. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and as always, if you want to read any of the articles I talked about today or look at some more photos I wasn't able to include, of course I've linked everything in the description down below. And if you guys are new to the channel, then welcome. We do these what's happening in fashion videos twice a week, every Monday and Friday. So if you're a fan and want to see more, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, if you just have any questions or comments or concerns, or even just want to talk about fashion in general, feel free to hit me up in the comments below. I'm always willing to talk about fashion. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching these videos and supporting my content. I hope you have a very good weekend ahead of you, and as always, until next time.